Hey everybody, I am Sean from DSTLRY, and I'm joined by three of the premier storytellers and sculptors of modern comics. They don't need an introduction at all, but let's give it a try. So he is the mind behind the Blood Brothers Mother, 100 Bullets, with epic runs on Hellblazer, Wonder Woman, Batman, and so many other comics. Mr. Brian Azzarello, how's it going, Brian?
Doing well. How are you, Sean?
I'm just magical. She is one of the most vibrant, introspective minds in comics as well, the creator of The Butcher of Paris, We Only Kill Each Other, as well as defining runs on Harley Quinn, Batman, and many, many more. Stephanie, how's it going, Stephanie?
Good. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm
Other than my,
caffeinated.
These intros are just
I think,
He's
yeah,
phenomenal.
He's
vibrant.
magical.
I've never been described as vibrant. Thank you.
I mean, that's what I think of your writing. Whenever we did the podcast, I was like,
Not
yeah,
me
it's had such a
writing.
life. But
It's
also you, I mean, we can talk about that later because something that we used to discuss is incorporate one of your characters, but we'll hold that for now. And Mr. Will Dennis, you are an iconic editor who sculpted so many of our modern mythologies that I won't go into because literally I would be here all day. But you're also the founding editor at DSTLRY, tackling and leading so many of our editorial projects, including what we're talking about today, Life. How's it going, Will?
Good. It's going good. I like
Yeah.
iconic. Iconic is good. It just says like you've been around a long time.
Mhm.
But you create things that last, which I don't think any of us could do.
That is a good philosophy. You want things that are going to last.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and talk about the comic on our minds, and that is Life. And Life is incredibly innovative from multiple standpoints, both from a form and a function. So, Brian, Stephanie, you're uniting with a wonderful artist, Daniel Zazelj, and let me know if I mispronounced that. But
It's close. I think the
close.
L is kind of silent. It's like Zizej, I think is usually, but you know,
That's
it's up
Got
for.
so how did you guys come together on this science fiction project?
Uh,
Uh,
who's that for? Brian?
That is for Brian and Stephanie, and then we can add Will in later.
I think it started, I was working on a story about a prison planet, and I think I was kind of almost like practice pitching it with Brian, like going through some of the story stuff. And turned out kind of Brian had some similar ideas about a story and started throwing out alternative concepts and competing concepts, and it ended up being something that we kind of thought, well, what if we took all of those things and put them into one story, which is actually like kind of two stories where it's like the two competing perspectives. Yeah, I think it just like started with talking about it, and pretty quickly rolled into like, maybe this is something we should look into working on together.
No, that's fabulous. And you're both co-writing it together. How does that break down? What's your process like from showing these two perspectives, which are criminals and thieves who collide very violently? So from, a very basic perspective, how does that creativity come together and how do you form it?
well, I think I'm the only one who's broken down so far, Sean.
What?
I don't think it's that kind of a podcast, actually.
I would disagree.
I'm gonna break down before the end of this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was wondering that too when you first approached me about it, because it was like, are you gonna co-write the actual sides of it, or are you gonna sort of riff on each other's stuff? And I think it's sort of falling somewhere in the middle, of that. There's definite like sort of assignments one side or the other side, but then there's just like so much back and forth collaboration that it's like, even in terms of the credits, like, they're putting both their names on both sides of the story. So because, yeah, I don't know, you said at the top, but it's like the big innovation is that it's this flip book, right? So I don't want to like step all your questions, Sean, but
No, by all means, you phrase that so much better.
The same story being told from two different, points of view, essentially, and working towards when they start to overlap, So at the moment, they sort of seem very separate, but even by the end of the first issue, they start to coalesce, But now, like, we're on issue 3, like we're almost done with issue 3 for all you retailers out there who are worried about it. And they're really starting to intertwine now. So I'm actually looking forward to the next issue to see kind of like how to keep the streams separate enough that it feels like they're, you know what I mean? Like that's going to be a real trick, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But anyway, so yeah, things are going along, but I don't mean to talk for Brian, although I have been doing that for the last 20 some years, right, Brian? That's why I go on
That's
all
right.
like a ventriloquist act. He doesn't move his mouth. But I don't know, did you guys have a sense of that, like when you first started, like I'm gonna do this, you're gonna do that, or was it just kind of more?
Yes, and then we flipped it.
Yeah, and then we flipped it because we thought we were falling into things that seemed a little too obvious for our particular writing styles, and we ended up like trying to stay away from that, because I think it's more interesting to challenge, like, something that we've seen Brian do a certain type of storytelling. It's like, well, maybe we force me to do something like my version of a certain type of genre or element of the story. So initially, and that kind of scared me, I think, a little bit initially, which was like, oh, like I felt very set in like what my role, which characters I was kind of going to be voicing a bit more of. And, I think Brian was right. Like, yeah, but that kind of comfort is why we should switch. Like when it gets too comfortable like that, you should be getting the other perspective. So like that was the point of having 2 writers on it. And yeah, I think that worked well.
So who have been the most uncomfortable characters to write for each of you? Who were a little bit outside of your normal sport, so to say?
Wait, can you repeat that? Sorry, you broke up for me a little bit.
Oh, sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's probably my Wi-Fi. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So you said you had to step outside your comfort zone. Which were the most difficult characters for you to write?
Anybody that's not a mass murderer.
That's actually, I don't know, like creating like really bad people in this book. It's like, I think we spent quite a bit of time kind of developing the prisoners and their backstories, and that came together the fastest and first. And then the thieves and their relationships with one another and the morality or how they were going to work into or their relationships with one another. That was, I think Brian's right. That was actually more difficult.
It's funny, Stephanie, because I was reading this for the first time and they mentioned Jax being in the ring. I'm like, oh, Stephanie's a kickboxer. No, the question is like, how much of Jax incorporates your backstory and are you the inspiration for?
You got to ask Brian that one. Brian created Jax.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. It is.
Yes.
Okay, well then.
I mean, that was pretty cool to see when he sent some character ideas back and it was like a part of Jax's backstory. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I like that, I'm going to assume I influenced that unless you're like sneaking off to kickboxing classes that I don't know about, which, man, I'm excited.
Right.
I'm gonna spar next.
You're gonna need kickboxing skills next. Yeah, well, yeah, that is true. I forgot that you guys had started out like doing essentially focusing on the other half, yourself, and then, but I don't know. I admire the fact that you'd like switch it up like that. A lot of people. I mean, you see that a lot in comics in general. I think, right? People just kind of keep doing the same stuff, and they're comfortable doing it, and
yes,
it's a lot of fans really like that. It's not really like a value judgment, but it's just like I think it's true of these two, and certainly a lot of the distillery creators is just like trying to do stuff that's a little outside your typical comfort zone. If you have the freedom to do it, then you should probably take advantage of it.
I mean, the whole thing is kind of I think as a writer, we kind of sit alone and like write the script, and yeah, there's other people on the team, but having to sit you know, like we do, and go through outlines and throw out different ideas and see how they fit together, and like literally build a puzzle together before you can even start writing. Like that's pretty outside of the comfort zone of like, I guess, how we write comics most of the time.
Yeah, and the flip part definitely does. It adds this other element, you know, that's not just like a gimmicky sort of element. It really starts, like I have to read these over and over and over when you do the corrections, and it's like reading them you read them one way and then you read them the other way and then you read them you know what I mean? If you flip flop back and forth, like it's kind of interesting how it starts to really, you know, mess with your experience, just in terms of when you know something's going to happen, but you're not sure why, you know, when it's, you know, that sort of stuff. And then, you know, this also is like different from the standpoint of it's going to be 6 issues instead of just the 3 we've been doing, you know? So it's longer too, which is, you know, was sort of a new thing for Distillery in general here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's given them a lot of room to, you know, do a lot of cool stuff.
I mean, the thing I love the most about this is like my initial point of comparison was The Wire, because you're tackling this perspective of the entire ecosystem of crime and society's kind of response to crime. And it's super thorough and kind of introspective from that point of view. So like, how deep are we going here? Are you trying to like basically go ahead and explore multiple facets, or was it a little bit more character driven?
It's character driven.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can't do The Wire in 6 issues, Sean. Come on.
I think, Brian, you can do anything he wants you, man.
No, I don't think the comparison is completely unapt, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like The Wire has that kind of Dickensian quality of all these different characters, and you're sort of seeing certain events from the same point of view and stuff. And you clearly have that in here, but it's always very character driven. I feel like both these writers are both very character driven. Although this one actually has like one very high concept-y and there's a lot of action in it, you know, which is not unusual necessarily, but and maybe that's the format. I think like trying to take advantage of the format as much as possible, you know, opening it up to bigger, you know, spreads or action pieces and things like that. But yeah, noticing that there's a good dose of all that kind of stuff as well, which is nice, you know. Maybe that's the extra issues gives you a little more latitude, but yeah, you know, so, but I don't know, maybe, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like I mean, The Wire is so vast, it's obviously not going to be that, but I think it has elements of it. I don't think it's completely, you know, off the wall, Sean.
Yeah, 1000%. But you know, Brian, you've been working with Will, and Will, you've been working with Brian for decades and decades. So, Will, what struck you about this project initially that was either, you know, capitalizing on things you loved about Brian's work, or you saw as kind of an innovation of it?
Well, you know, like I'm a sucker for like a prison kind of setting, but I'm also a sucker for like a heist film, you know? So you take both elements of that, plus you're adding these kind of science fiction elements. So you've got vibes that are, you know, got sort of aliens vibes, sort of even Predator kind of vibes, because they're like, you know, the prisoners sort of have morphed into these monstrous characters, you know?
Yeah.
So it has like lots of that sort of feel to it, but yeah, at the heart, it's still these really, you know, somewhat despicable yet attractive characters. I mean, I feel like they both have done that. I mean, I had to recently write this essay about 100 bullets for some catalog, I think, and at San Diego, and having to go back and reread all those books. I mean, I didn't read the entire series, but I was going pretty deep, like back into storylines and stuff, trying to, you know, just recall scenes and things that we were doing at the time. And yeah, I mean, those characters are just like, you know, reprehensible, like on most levels, you know. And we used to sit around laughing about that people would come up and be like, oh, Lono's my favorite character, I love him. And Brian would be like, he's like the worst person on the face of the earth, like, what's the matter with you, you know, like, get away from us, you sicko, you know. But I think that's still the thing here, you know, that in terms of, I think on both sides of the story, I mean, I think switching it again, like I said, was really like smart, because you've got like the CJ, one of the main criminal characters, who's just like gross, but at
Yeah.
the same time, you can't. I mean, there's a part of you that's sort of rooting for him, you know, like, and I think that's the thing that like they're playing with the whole time is like when you're all bad guys, like who are you supposed to root for, you know?
I was literally
But
about to say, I think like Brian and Stephanie, like one of their biggest strengths is moral relativity. Like it's
Mhm.
at least black and white characters or conflicts you can find in comics, especially
right.
with the books you were writing, you were talking about just now.
Well, you
Yeah.
have, they
Yeah.
did terrible things and they obviously have these multiple life sentences. They wouldn't have those if they didn't. But when
Yeah.
you see where they're at hundreds of years in the future with like cancers on their body and, you know, you've got guys that 300 years on a planet don't have their mind anymore, or just like all the things that have happened to them. And then you have to ask like, well, is that the justice that like, is that like, once you kind of learn what they've all done, I think then you ask like, well, is that the right response to this? Maybe the answer is yes, because they have done some horrible things, and maybe it's not.
So I think we kind of wandered into the deep side of the pool initially, and what Stephanie's talking about is this is a world where if you're a convict who's done terrible things, you just don't have one life sentence. You are artificially immortal. They inject you, and you live out all of your life sentences until they're done, right?
Yeah. So that would
Yeah.
be, you've got like 30 something life sentences. That's thousands of years that you were kept alive to serve out the full term, all of those life sentences. We went with like the average age span or lifespan. It was, I think it was like 75 when we were researching this, and then kind of just used the math from that. It was something like that. I can go back and find our notes, but that was kind of how we got our like in this world they have defined like a lifespan as, you know, that many years. And yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing too, without giving away, which I think it's kind of in the first issue, but the idea that they're going to rob this planet, like the other side of the book is, you know, they're going to, because they think that there's all this, you know, these diamonds, all this loot on this planet. But the idea that like, because of the things that have changed over time while these guys have been on this planet, all the wars, all the evolutions, all the politics, whatever, like they're kind of just, it's like a deserted planet. Like they have been sort of just forgotten, you know what I mean? Like it just that they're getting out there, like they think it's easy pickings because they don't, one, they don't, I don't think they think anyone's still going to be there, but they also like the idea, like the notion that you could set all this up, condemn people to live there for 300, 400, 500 years, but then just over the course of that time, like you forget they're there, kind of, you know, which I think is more, you know, sadly is fairly apt in terms of how we look at even like the prison system in this country, particularly, you know, that it's just sort of like out of sight, out of mind, you know.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's not, I mean, again, like these kinds of themes, I think they both explore so well in all of their work. If you go back through and really look at like what these books are really about, like a book like Moonshine or a book like 100 Bullets or Stephanie's books, you know, but they're also done in a way that it's like entertaining, you know, and it looks awesome and the colors are awesome and it's like exciting and fun and, you know, in a lot of ways. So, I mean, I always, that for me is always like the sweet spot that you're trying to find, you know, like I don't want to be working on books that are just really didactic or really dry or really sort of, you know, look at this thing that we're talking about here, you know, but without the sort of element of the entertaining element that should be there as well. I mean, it's still a comic, like it still should be kind of fun and, you know, cool to read.
Yeah, 1000%. And if anybody wants to see this magic, you can go to distillery.co right now, and Bryce will put a link in the chat. You can download an ash can to get a sample of what's coming out, and it's amazing. We should probably talk about Daniel a little bit because his work right now is fabulous. And Brian, I know you've worked with him before as well. So what made him the perfect artist for this project?
Knew we could get it done.
He is.
I knew I could have written that line for Brian. I was waffling between I knew he could get it done and he was available. Those are the two that if I had $1 for every panel we sat on and you said, yeah, he was available, like, you know, which it's not why, but okay. Yeah. But But
No,
you're
you
not wrong.
really
You're not wrong. He's not
No,
wrong.
no, I mean,
He's fast, absolutely.
yes, he's very,
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
I
super.
mean, the fastest artist I have worked with. It is a lot, but no, that is not, even before that came into play, and I think we realized how fast he was going to work on it. Brian was really advocating for like, Brian really wanted Daniel on this book. You'd worked with him, and it wasn't that I didn't know Daniel. I didn't have a working relationship with him, and yeah, that was Brian kind of bringing that and saying, like, I really like working with this person. Collaborating with them is really good, and I mean, obviously Daniel's work is super cool, so it was a good fit.
yeah, I thought that the mood that we were going after, he would capture it, no problem.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for sure. I mean, I knew we could get it done, or we knew because we've worked with him I mean, I've worked with him off and on so many times over the years, but there's just that weird otherworldly quality to his work. Like, you never fully know, like, you're in the world, you can tell what it is, all the environments are clear, that kind of thing, but there still is always that kind of dream-like quality to a lot of it. So I think for particularly something like this, like a science fiction thing, like, I think it works really well, that you feel like it looks otherworldly, it feels very otherworldly, but yeah, the mood is really, because you want it's got elements of all those things. It's got the heist film elements, it's got kind of Western elements. Like, you want all those sorts of things. There's romance, between the characters. You want it to be a little sexy, like a little slick, like it's not all just like gritty, grimy crime kind of stuff. So yeah, and I mean, because we knew it was 6 issues, but they're double-size issues. So it's really like 12 issues, right, of a regular comic book.
Right.
And I don't even need one hand to count the people that, in this day and age could do 12 issues in a row, like on a timely basis. Like, I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'd be hard pressed to name like the second person who could do it. I mean, just, it used to be very true, but I feel like more and more, it's been more and more difficult, to find people who can deliver that steadily. I mean, he's delivering at a rate that these guys are having to like readjust their writing schedules on other projects just to keep him fed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that he's not idle. So, which is tough on them, but I appreciate that they've been willing to kind of adjust things, move stuff around to make that work, for him. But that's pretty rare in this day and age in comics, sadly,
Yeah, and his harmony with colorist Lee Lowridge is amazing. Like, it's very moody. You can tell when you're shifting palettes, like the mood of the entire comic changes. Yeah, it's almost incredibly stylistically and like noir, but there's also a sense of decay to it as well. And Bryce is showing us some of the interior pages coming up, I believe.
Yeah, I had worked with, I mean, Daniel had done this book Nostalgia for me at Comixology, and I had hooked up Lee with, him on that. And I feel like Lee might have worked with him on something, I can't remember what it is, but Daniel's such an easygoing guy, in general, and artist in general, that and he really just kind of lets Lee do what he wants to do. There's been very minimal notes from him, which isn't always the case with artists and colorists, even ones that have collaborated a lot together.
Right.
There can sometimes be a lot of tension or a lot of corrections, or you're just not getting what I'm trying to do, sort of thing. But I feel like they really both seem to understand what they're doing,
Yeah, and for anybody watching, this is part of the prose section of the first issue that has Bobby, a thief, being released from prison and uniting with Jax, his girlfriend. Yeah, I mean, I loved how it started out being incredibly sepia and grimy in the jail, and then it goes to something that's a little bit more vibrant when he reunites with his girlfriend. Just so tangibly evocative.
Yeah, and you can see the Blade Runner influences and things, but yeah, I mean, and when it gets going further, like the third issue, second, third issue, like the planet pages are like really wild, some of them, you know, like the colors, like really saturated pinks and purples and things like that, you know.
Design of that planet is just really, really cool. And I don't know, unless I wasn't a part of it, I don't remember Daniel giving these like very specific instructions for it. It's like Lee just knew like, okay, this is how that planet needs to be colored, which is pretty cool.
I don't think he gave him any instructions, honestly. I mean,
There was
was there?
a color. He wanted a color for the sky.
Oh,
Okay.
He didn't say, I want this, that the sky is always this kind of color.
Okay. Yeah. Almost like some sort of, there's like a toxic quality to the sky.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, listen, I've been on books where the artist is, you know, writing like War and Peace, like notes to the colorist, you know. I mean, I've been in books that where the artist is so unhappy with the colorist that they start inking everything so that there's nothing for the colorist to color. Like that's how that's usually, I mean, usually you have to then at that point say like, okay, maybe we need to find somebody else, but it's nothing like that on this. I mean, you know, this book is definitely coming together like really fast, you know.
Yeah, no, 1000%. And just so everybody knows who's listening in, you can submit questions, and we already have a few to ask to Brian, Stephanie, and Will. And also just to note, please pre-order Life before this Monday. That's FOC, final order cutoff, 7/15, and then I'll be releasing in late August. It is beautiful and ready to go. So we do have one question from Jason. It says, I assume this required coordinating your stories with each other. Did you have any differences about how the story should go? And if so, how did you resolve them?
Yes.
Why is Brian laughing?
Because he knows the answer is yes.
We're two very opinionated people.
Right. Let me refer you to issue 3. Has not been seen and shall not be spoken about.
Well, so like, I mean, the main story beats and things like that, like, you know, knowing where this is going and whatnot, like we've known that since before we started writing. Like we know what the story is, characters, and all those kinds of things. I think the more that the stories really like interlock, the more it becomes like, well, then which one of us gets a scene that's like this character that started out with one of us going to this place, and it becomes like, yeah, there's a lot to coordinate with that. Like, and also getting a voice correct, like, you know, if one of us has started writing a voice for one character and making sure that's consistent, if then one of us picks up that ball and like, you know, is kind of using that in a slightly different way. So yeah, it's been a lot to coordinate, but
what's like the process though? Because I don't even know myself. Like, are you just passing scripts back and forth? Do you have like one single document? Do you get on the phone and talk it over? Do you get on like Zoom and talk it over? Is it all like, you know, what's been like just the actual physical collaborative aspect of it?
Well, I mean, usually I think we're in the same place more often than not, most of the time.
Well, like, will you be talking and someone's typing, or are you just sort of like
yeah, I mean, so it's a mix. We've definitely done that. We've done like I type really fast, so we've done like talking, and you know, I'm kind of typing out the kind of outline as we're talking about it. I've got like just an app or notes app thing full on my phone of like conversations we've had, just kind of sitting there talking about the ideas and how they link up together. We spend quite a bit of time talking about every new issue before writing it. So there's a lot of that.
Got some good material for a collection there, I think, right, Sean?
Yeah, 1000%.
I don't know. I gotta now go like scrub through it. What horrible.
Right.
What have we said?
All the stuff you're complaining about me. Take it out. Strike that from the record, Your Honor. But yeah, I'm always fascinated by just the actual, as much as I know these creators, and I've worked now like what 25 years on this kind of stuff. I don't know as much as I wish I did about just like the actual process, you know, like the actual, I mean, everyone's process is different, but like just how you actually, you know, where you are, how you do it. Are you typing? Are you writing? Like, is it dictated? You know, like, I don't know. I find all that kind of stuff quite interesting, you know, but.
I mean, it's very robust. I mean, you have 48 pages per issue, and then you have 6 issues. That's so much story coming together. It has to take a lot of coordination.
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of world building involved too. So it's like trying to strike a balance between, like, you know, you never want to info dump, but there's also these cool elements of the world and the characters that we want to make sure come through, the history of like what has happened with Earth. It is a sci-fi story, and those kinds of things, kind of painting the full picture, but making sure it's still organic has been, you know, I think that's also where, you know, if we write something and have the other read it, that's usually a good litmus test, I think, to like, okay, you know, something on their end, you know, they've read it and there's something that's off or not feeling right, then we got to figure out like, why is it not, what part it's not fitting right? Like, is there something that feels inorganic? Like, you know, we have a character that maybe info dump too much, like, oh, we just want the reader to know this really cool thing, and it's like, wait, let's find a better way for that to be integrated. But those are the kinds of things that I think we're talking about mostly when we get into an issue, because the larger plot points I think have been in place for a while.
Well, it's funny because I was reading the first issue and I saw like the Green War, and I'm like, oh, they have a sheet of paper, and I'm sure it has years notched down, and they've mapped out this entire universe through centuries, I'm guessing.
Right. Brian's shaking, you're shaking your head, but no, Will knows this. I built the line.
So I'm right? Was my assumption right, Stephanie?
At least for one of us, apparently.
Her side, yeah, exactly. It was right. Brian just shows up, and you know. No, yeah, that is true, because we haven't really talked about it internally, but as you read it, like, yeah, they drop these little nuggets like that, and it is, yeah, it's cool. Like, you do get the sense that there's been 300 or however many hundreds of years of history have gone on away from this planet, you know, which again, like I said earlier, is like, I think as the series goes on, there's somewhat like a poignancy to these characters, which seems weird given like they're all kind of monsters, but you just sort of feel like they've just been completely kind of forgotten, and all this other crazy stuff has gone on in between, you know? And I think even those elements would be interesting, like as we get them more connected to each other, like them learning what's been happening, and, you know, like the things they can't even do, like the things that, you know, like it's like, but that's, yeah, it's like world building kind of stuff, you know, which is cool.
And one thing I wanted to touch on, because we haven't talked about the flipbook aspect, is we're doing something cool with the covers. And Will you walk us through this, because you're kind of leading point on that, and it's a lot of work. I think Bryce is going to pull some of them up so we can take a look at some of this beauty for each issue.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've been sort of all tag teaming on the cover variants and stuff, thankfully, but yeah, I mean, this one actually, I think this is like a Chip Mosier joint, actually, this first cover, because originally had done 2 cover, like, this was my own fault, but we had, all the covers have had these A and B covers by the main cover artist. So I was telling Daniel, like, we'll do one that's the sort of heist side, and then do one that's sort of the cons monster side, which is this side. So this was actually originally, it was this guy, and then the other side was him before he transforms into that. And then the spaceship was the spaceship with, you could see the diamonds and stuff, but then on the other side was sort of space, all this, I don't, you know, like space junk kind of like, so you got the sense it'd been like a battle, or there was some sort of thing. But then Chip, I think, which I you know, I agree, was pretty adamant about, from a marketing and sales standpoint, like we really need to, like, people aren't maybe going to get both covers, or, you know, so that this was like really a way to kind of show both sides of the story very clearly for the first issue. So that's been a challenge, like for the variants in particular, is trying to find ways to capture both sides of the story, but in a way that feels like kind of integrated and, you know, somewhat, you know, connected, or, you know, whatever. So it's definitely, yeah, I've never worked on anything like this, you know, in my whole career really. So, but I think it shows, I mean, we were saying, I mean, it's another thing of like talking about distillery. I don't know anybody else that would try this, you know? I mean, I think one of the things I really enjoy about working with this company is just that idea, that they're willing to try these kinds of things. You know, they're willing to change up the format from 3 issues to 6 issues. They're willing to say like, let's, you know, I mean, after years of trying to navigate DC Comics, and I was really good at it, you know, but it's like, I mean, Brian, I've said this before, like the things we got away with kind of happened, you know, they sort of happened despite the best efforts of a lot of people at a company like DC Comics, you know.
Sure.
That's not generally the case here at all, ever, you know, where it's just sort of like, yeah, let's just figure it out. Like you just want somebody to say like, we'll figure it out, you know. And so I think this was smart on Chip's part, you know, to kind of push to have both of these on the first one.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because you have, you know, a basically sized, you know, what you'd find in a normal issue, and then you have another one and they're flipped. It's basically getting 2 issues that kind of coalesce and dovetail as the narrative goes on more deeply. That's a super innovative idea and way to approach a story.
We had talked about like, I mean, we had talked about different ways that we thought might work. I mean, one way was like, do we just have 2 issues come out every month that like are singular of the story and you have to go get both issues? And I just feel like you get something kind of incomplete, and there's a part of this story that, like, I keep saying the word puzzle because really there's something very interactive about the kind of storytelling we're doing in creating a puzzle, and then you add in the flip book element that has like a literal interactive component, even if it's something as small as like physically flipping the book. And it's like, well, now we're kind of inviting you to come use part, like look at the puzzle too, or like, I don't know, there's not like a giant mystery, but like, you know, putting together that puzzle and seeing those pieces come together. So I like that because it's something you can do with a comic that you cannot do with any other format.
Right.
And that to me was really important. Like we're writing a comic book, and I think getting to have fun with the format, with the medium, with the readers and how they engage with it is something that we don't get to do enough of. And like you said, Distillery letting us do that is pretty cool. So.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no right way to read it, right? You know what I mean? Like we're not suggesting start with this side or that side at all on any of them, which will be particularly challenging like going forward as they do start to come, you know, more and more together. But you know, I think I'm sure we can figure it out. But it's definitely interesting in that respect, you know. Even the idea that you could, you know, you split them apart and read, you know, I don't know, like it's very interesting, like the whole thing, but I've never.
Yes, you'll be able to.
Yeah, it is true though. You said like, there's no other, you couldn't do this in really any other format, you know? And I do think that I talk about this, I feel like I talk about this a lot to people, but it's like, it's just kind of fun, you know, like it's a cool idea. Like in comics used to be really filled with like tons of cool ideas, like just fun, you know, and it doesn't mean the subject matter has to be fun or lighter, all, you know, that kind of stuff, but it's like this should be fun, like working on this should be fun, reading this stuff should be fun, it's entertainment, it should be just, you know. And I feel like we've just really gotten away from that in so many ways, you know. And just this is just chock full of ideas, it's chock full of cool characters, worlds that you hear about but you don't get to see. And maybe you will at some point. Maybe you go back at some point and see some of that other stuff. I don't know, but you know, like for now, it just feels like this fun, kind of cool ride that hopefully people will, you know, check out, you know.
So on that note, we do have an interesting question. Would starting from one side versus the other in the flip book change the perspective of the story?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's 2 different perspectives.
Sure. But do you think it would color the second half? Would you think you'd be more sympathetic to one side based on the order you go in?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah, I think so.
No, I want to. I don't know the reader. Like, I don't know that I know the answer because I know what's happening on the other half at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know what's going on when I'm putting it together. So from somebody else's perspective, like, I mean, I guess I am curious, like, you know, if you start with one half and then you get to the other side, is your opinion, are you going to have a very different opinion of the character's perspective from the other half? I don't know.
I
Right.
suppose, Sean, you're the best one to answer that question.
Yeah, you weren't at the process stage. So.
No, you're right. I am to be honest, starting out, I did really like the pros quite a bit. Yeah, I like Jax a lot, and in general, but like I like Corey James Perry because of what you're doing. It's more interesting to have somebody who's so irredeemable and then feel sympathy. That's
Mhm.
an
Mhm.
incredibly potent writing trick that few writers could pull off. So, I mean, in general, I would say yes, but I would like my mind changed. And I may like for each issue, read it from a different perspective to see how that flips around.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what kind of feedback we get from fans reading it and that sort of stuff. Or if they're trying to make connections that maybe we didn't intentionally have in there, or they don't intentionally have in there, but you start to see connections, thematic connections, character connections, that sort of stuff. I mean, I feel like the best things make you like active readers, right? And I think, particularly, I mean, I haven't worked with Stephanie as much, but I know she has elements of that. But, Brian, like one of the things for years I've just admired about working on his stuff is that he generally takes the path it's unexpected, but it makes you work for stuff. You know what I mean? Like it makes you fill in blanks. It makes you very active. Like, and I feel like both our tendencies tended to be for like those quieter choices or more obtuse choices. And you would sometimes get a lot of pushback, like particularly on books like 100 Bullets, when it'd be like, all right, let's just leave it like this. And then, Karen or somebody would be like, I don't understand what happened here. And it's like, well, yeah, exactly. Like you're not supposed to understand, like we need you to fill in the blanks, or you need to sort of imagine what happened, or, like you're only going to people. I mean, how many times, Brian, I'm sure you've had it where you do those little one shot interstitial issues and people would be like, so we're going to see this guy again. And you're like, no, never. Like that was it. And like, but I don't, and I feel like it's, that sort of thing. Like the best stuff keeps you engaged and active, and then you can go back and re-experience it and, sort of like, it'll be interesting to read this collected too, because it's like, once you kind of read it and you're reading it all in one go, like, how does that inform the experience, but I don't know. I feel like sadly, a lot of comics, at least for me, maybe I'm just jaded, but a lot of comics don't engage me on that in that way. Where I feel like I having to do some work, I need to fill in some blanks kind of thing. It's all very spoon fed to you. Like even, I mean, I jokingly call it like comic book dialogue, where it's like, and then this happens, and then this happens, or I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, then I'm going to do it, then I'm going to talk about what I just did. Like that kind of shit. Like it's like, I have no interest in that. And thankfully, neither of these people do either.
I mean, it seems like a lot of comics right now are being written to elicit a response on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like get on and say I love it. It's like what was that?
Right.
I'm not gonna spend my time doing that kind of shit.
Yeah, because you want this to be challenging, right? You want to be grappling with, like, this guy's a monster, but but I'm rooting for him. But that's what makes Frankenstein work, right? Like Frankenstein's monster, that guy's diabolical, the monster. Like, I mean, sadly in movies and stuff, he's always portrayed as this kind of lumbering, thing. But in the book, he's like literally setting up murders and framing people and doing all this crazy stuff. But you're rooting for him the whole time because you feel bad that like he didn't ask for this, So I feel like that sort of stuff, there's those sorts of themes, or that sort of just that dynamic exists here for sure.
Real quick, I think we cut Bryce off. Bryce, would you mind showing us some of the other covers we have for the first issue? I know we have Jock, another founding creator at DSTLRY, doing an incredibly dynamic B cover right there. That's gorgeous. And as you can see, it works in two different ways. So it works as one image, but as you can see, you can also split it down the middle. It's also its own cover. And also another cool thing is if you are a retailer on this call, if you order 10 issues of A, you will get 2 issues of B, of the B cover for free.
Yeah, that was Jock's homage to the losers is what I told him. We told him we need something. Yeah, this one's unbelievable. That's Dave Johnson's covers.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you've got like Jax and Bobby on the left upside down there, and you've got, but then on the right, but that's a real homage to those kind of Ace Tor
Yeah.
sci-fi, like even those reds and stuff, like I know that's like what he's looking at, right? Like that sort of brick red sort of color. Like you go back and look at that, it's just Google like 60s sci-fi novel covers or something, and you'll see those kinds of cover, like the rocket ship with the yellow planet behind it there and on the right hand side. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Like
Yeah.
I mean, in this case too, somebody pointed out to me, I think it was Greg Lockhart, like how he's incorporated like Daniel's sort of,
Yeah, it was Greg.
the look of Daniel's art into it, like that CJ face behind the bars and the robot like kind of skull thing, like that. Yeah, that was pretty interesting that you can sort of, it has Daniel's style without being, Daniel's art.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's gorgeous.
Dave, I mean,
This
I
this was part of Dave's inspiration that he sent. So it's like,
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I just picture Dave sitting around all day long, like looking at like, covers like that and like pining away for, those things. But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good stuff about Dave Johnson, obviously. I mean, from the day I started working on, 100 Bullets, whatever, it's like that was 25 years ago, and the guy is still doing covers like this innovative and this thought provoking and this kind of fresh. Like I don't know how he does it, honestly. Like when you see all the phone in jobs that you see like across, not just comics, but movie posters and everything, and book covers, everything, he doesn't really get the respect that he deserves, in my humble opinion.
Well, we'll continue to publish his covers because they are striking, as you're saying. Yeah,
Thank you.
Bryce, what else do we have down the line for these covers? Oh, that's Junko Mizuno, another founding creator. Doing our monogram D cover. So yeah, this is the 1 in 50 cover. Yeah, as you can see, she flipped the D to play with the entire flip book mentality going on here in design.
Mm-hmm.
Very beautiful and vibrant.
Yeah, I mean, but compositionally too, with like the buildings and the plants, like forming all these different, pointing at the characters, while the D like telescopes across the spine. It looks sort of simple, but it's, like she's using the perspective lines of the buildings almost to fill you out on the D and stuff,
Right.
Cool, and the plants at the bottom like almost continue the D on the right hand side. Like I don't know, it's tricky because to get her art style to accommodate this kind of a story is obviously like really challenging, but I thought it was, it was a cool take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1000%. Cool. And this is a cover we recently revealed from one of your collaborators, Stephanie Riley Rossmo. And yeah, this is just pure bloody rusty chaos.
Mm-hmm. That's wild.
Yeah, no, this is Riley Riley messaged me a bunch and like really wanted to, he had some really cool ideas. And at first I couldn't like picture all of it, but I mean, I just kind of have a motto, like in Riley we trust, like you kind of just let him do what he wants to do and you will get the best thing from it. And yeah, sure enough, by just kind of like stepping back, letting him read the issues and stuff, it was like, yeah, when he texted me like the sketch for this, I was like, yeah, I like that a lot. Like the back concept and the way they like flow together, like down. It's so cool.
Yeah, there's the access points of corpses.
Yeah. And when we were talking about it originally, we had talked about, are there ways for artists that can sort of incorporate elements across, but that would also make you kind of flip it upside down to see what it was? And that's been kind of honestly more challenging than maybe I envisioned it was going to be. So you do end up with a lot of these images that are essentially two different covers. But yeah, he did an outstanding job here of incorporating, and there's just enough elements on both halves that you're like, what is that? Like, would I think naturally make you want to kind of see what's on the other side, which is always a, you know, which isn't something you normally have to do because usually it's just the back of the cover, right? So.
And I know that his interest was in the like biology that would change. So like after being alive for hundreds of years longer than the body was meant to handle, he was interested in the actual like physiology of it. And that's something he said he wanted to do was like show like how would the literal like skeletal structure of a human like change on a planet after hundreds of years. It's not Earth, all these different environmental factors, illnesses, things like that. So yeah, I was like, that's we haven't seen that on any other cover, so that's pretty cool.
Did he color it himself?
Yes. Yeah.
The colors are fantastic.
Yeah. So Stephanie, my next question is, how would the human body evolve?
No, I actually, so Brian knows this too. My sister does microbiology. I don't know, something like that. You can correct me, whatever it is she does. But I like kind of went to her and I was like, walk me through this. And she did. She's very like textbook, like here's all the things, but a lot of the stuff that we kind of built into even descriptions that we were giving to Daniel are like, it all stemmed from my sister getting to tell me all the things that she knows best about, which was terrifying, but she got very, very into it. And will still text, like she doesn't really read comics. This might be the only thing she's very invested in for the biology of it all, but
yeah, I don't know, Sean, how much longer you want to go? There's a couple questions I saw, like I can answer, like in the chat. It says, how much is written at this point? So yeah, they're on the 3rd issue. And I'm sure that will be done sooner than later. So, and certainly by the time the 1st issue comes out, like Daniel will be on the 4th issue.
Oh yeah,
easily. So, because I think we're end of August? Yeah, it's only mid-July. So he may even be starting practically at least on maybe the first half of the 5th one, but certainly the 4th one will probably be almost done, you know, or like well underway by then. So yeah, so from a scheduling standpoint, like we're, you know, in really good shape in that respect, you know, like I think it will just be easy to come out when it wants to come out. And then what was the other one I saw that I thought maybe you could answer?
Is the idea that the 2 books will blend into one, or do they stay separate throughout? And I think we've touched on this, and they absolutely will blend. It will be professional thieves and artificially immortal prisoners clashing, and I'm sure they won't be hugging. I mean, they might be hugging, working out issues, group therapy.
I hope so.
Yeah.
There's like some Iron John shout outs at one of the scenes that we were going to write. No, yeah, I mean they blend by the end of the 1st issue, honestly, but it's like they still, but the you know, but they
different perspectives on it. So yeah, even if you're seeing an event where multiple characters are present or the 2 sides are present, you're going to get the competing perspectives on that. Like, you know, no 2 people really experience the same event the same way. So so you're getting some of that in there too, which is,
yeah, you definitely got that sort of Rashomon quality, you know, to it, which is great.
We do have one final question, which is one we end all of our happy hours with, and that is, if there was a cocktail for life or an alcoholic drink for life, what would it be?
What drink would you drink for the rest of your life?
Jepson's Malort.
Ooh.
Actually, that's going to be my answer, Malort.
I think Malort has Malort has the same effect. It has the same effect on your body that like the characters in this like are going through.
Perfect answer.
Yeah.
By the Thrones, that is what I'm going for. How do you feel about life, Jepson's Malort?
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like steam escaping from a vent, you know, but you're just like
on the rocks.
I like mine straight, no chaser. Oh yeah,
that was the most sobering answer I've ever heard.
Gotta put the heist into it. It's on the rocks, man.
Right, there you go. Okay, you're so clever, wordsmith. Longtime wordsmith, Brian Azzarello. Yeah, that it is pretty great. Chicago's famous drink. But it does seem suitable given like all of the changes in your microbiology that these characters are experiencing. Anyone who's ever had that stuff knows exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Rice, that is pretty good. Shaken, not shaken and disturbed.
I just
Cannot
never
be-
figure out that like who got to the point where they're like, yeah, this is done. This is the drink. It's done. Like, let's go get it. Like, get these bottles out. They need to be on the streets of Chicago by Tuesday. You know, like who was that guy? Was just like, yeah, all right, this is good. Let's go, roll it. You know, oh, what a sadist. But
Yeah, great. Everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about Life. Please pre-order it from your local comic book store before Monday, 7/15. It will release in late August, and it is amazing. Stephanie, Brian, Will, thank you once more, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining our happy hour.
Thank you so much.
thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, everybody.